Singwi, welcome for joining. Thank you for joining us again. Today, our format is going to be slightly different. We'd like to start off with first going through all the questions that we didn't get to ask in last week's session. Thereafter, if you could please take over with your presentation, and then we will take questions from this week's presentation. This week, we are further discussing brain waves in meditation, as well as the chemical balance and autonomic nervous system. It's quite a complicated topic. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to a very interesting session. Anupama, on to you.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, good evening, and good evening, everybody, and good afternoon to people in Argentina. So I'll be asking questions today, which we were not able to take answers in the last session. So I'll begin with the first question. So this question was asked from Argentina. This question is to you, Dr. Singhvi, that what happens in the brain when we chant? Can you give us a scientific explanation or any case study or research paper that you can share?
See, all the sounds, when we talk positive, when we abuse, when we chant, they have vibrations, corresponding vibrations in the brain. It is been noted. Offhand, I will not be able to share the paper, but definitely it is there in the black and white that the chanting, when it is done, it has significant effect not only on the brain waves, but also it has been noted to have significant effect on channelizing the energy and also changes in the neurotransmitters and neurochemicals in the brain. And that's why it is said that when we speak anything, immediately there are repercussions on the brain, not only because of the vibrations, but also because of the meaning also. But usually when we chant, many times we even don't know the meaning, but still we chant. And they have their impact on the brain in a positive way. And lot of energy alignment is been noted. Yeah.
Okay. Swamiji, would you like to take any your thoughts on this?
Yeah, see, there was a research, Dr. Singhvi, in Japan, Dr. Masaru Emoto. I believe you have heard about it, and he did that. Yes.
Actually, I could not quote the research paper, the year, and other things. It is very difficult to remember the research papers to. And go ahead, Swamiji.
So he found out that the frequency, the sound frequency, the water molecule can absorb sound frequency. And they have certain changes, like when you use abusive words, there is a different change. And when you praise the water molecule, I'm not sure how authentic it is. And you rightly said that there are many mantras in Shamaveda, they have no meaning. But the frequency is so important because it says that our body has 70% of water, and water molecules absorbs those frequencies. And that's why a certain changes happens in our body. So even if we do the puja, we keep a kalash, we keep a pot full of water, and then we chant mantras, and then we drink that water. So you have any other, you have any other explanation about it, that water molecule?
Yeah. Yes, not only the water molecule, they have found out the shape of the individual crystals under the microscope. And when they chant, when they say it positive, they had a beautiful diagrammatic representation. But when there was a abusive sound or a hip hop music or a non-synchronized music, the alignment of the water was different. This is one thing. Second thing, it has been seen that the plants, when they grow, they also, if they are grown with a soft music, the growth is different. When a harsh music is played, their growth was actually stunted. So whatever the sounds, and even it is noted, very interesting, they did electrical activity of the brain. When a person was carrying an axe to cut the tree, actually the tree gets fearful. There was noted in the electrical frequency change. When the other way around, it was given manure, water, the frequency were different. So that's why when we say chanting of Om, every sound has got a vibration, and every vibration will have a repercussions on a particular cells of the brain. Because since we will be talking about neurochemistry today and autonomic nervous system activity, some neurochemicals will be covered there.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. So the next question is from India. So this is a very general question about meditation. Like all of us meditate, but how can we know that we meditated correctly?
See, meditation is not the subject of analyzing anymore, because last time I told, the more you research on this meditation, the more depth comes, and lot of things are waiting under the hood. You always will fall short as far as research is concerned. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, only 2 neurochemicals were found out in the meditation, 2 to 3. Now there are in 2 figures. More than 20 neurochemicals have been found out, and neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, there are 100 of them. So whether you meditated or not, if you have done the meditation from Art of Living, there will be explanation for all these things. I will give you a hint. If you are feeling sleepy during the meditation, the explanation is different. If you get a lot of thoughts, the explanation is different. And if you have experienced some vague vision or thought, good intuitive thing which come up during meditation, idea, the explanation is different. And when you don't get anything, again, the explanation is different. That's why it is said, meditation is no more a subject of, analyzing, but it is experiential. And when you think that whether I meditated nicely or not, you will always feel that whenever the day you feel good, next day you will sit and start thinking that I should get the same experience, which you will never get, and you will be sad. And today only I finished my 3 days workshop, Sahaj Samadhi. Today morning we concluded. This is regarding the meditation, whether you did, and still I think my answer has confused more. Yeah, next question, please.
Okay, so the next question is, it's from Argentina, that would meditation help me get over my physical pains?
Yes. Today, when we speak about neurochemistry and neurochemical things, you will get the answer there. And the answer is definitely yes. We will see how it occurs during our talk.
I would like to add one thing here. Sorry. You know, if you are started meditation and maybe you are doing it for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, or maybe some few years you are practicing it, you will observe one difference is that your response level has increased. You have stopped reacting. I'm not saying reaction is bad or reaction is good, but reaction most of the time comes from a disturbed mind where you cannot decide immediately what is that moment necessary or what is the right thing. So in meditation, when you start practicing, you realize that your decision making power increased. You started responding to the situation instead of reacting to the situation. And for a long time meditation, you will realize that you get a connection with the intelligence, which we call supercomputer or the creative energy. So you will get a connection with that super consciousness, which has all the intelligence and which is creating every moment something different. Like the same intelligence has created coronavirus and the same intelligence has created the vaccine also. So when you practice it for a long time, you will see a connection between you and that is called revibrating. It is very clearly mentioned in the Upanishad that when you are back to the source, then only you can catch that frequency which has created the whole universe. So you can get a glimpse of it. So for me, long-term meditation, that is possible, and that's why there was a rule that when you meditate for 10 years, 12 years, you come down one day, you go and you give it to everybody, the energy. That was the Kumbh Mela. So people used to meditate for 12 years, and then one day they used to come down and go to the river and take a dip and spread that vibration to everybody. Yes, Anupama, please.
Awesome, awesome.
Another thing, Anupama. Still they want to analyze, then they can go under the EEG, functional MRI, which I spoke last time. If really they want to know they are doing a good thing or not, then subject for investigation.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question is from India. It is like, what is the effect of exposure of digital screen on my memory?
There is no effect. Next
That's
question,
helpful.
please.
That's really helpful. Okay. Okay, the next question is from Argentina, that would regular practice of meditation prevent Alzheimer's disease?
See, Alzheimer's disease is because of changes in the brain. There are certain plaques, the amyloid plaques, which are there. And that brings about changes in the neurochemistry, particularly acetylcholine levels. There is a neurochemical substance called as acetylcholine, which is very important for sustaining the memory. All the medicines which now they are giving acts by increasing the acetylcholine level and maintain certain degrees of memory. But when we meditate regularly, it has been seen that people who don't meditate, who are always depressed, who are having negative thoughts, anxiety, restlessness, they got in the area called as hippocampus, which is a seat of memory, along with the limbic circuit. There is something called as limbic system and various areas. There are plaques, amyloid plaques will deposit and they break the circuits, the continuity circuits. But in meditation, what happens? Many things it won't allow it to happen. The scars disappear, the acetylcholine levels go up, you become positive, the serotonin levels, which I'm going to speak today, it increases. So a meditator will definitely have a upper edge of not getting Alzheimer's, but there are a lot of factors which causes Alzheimer's. But the tool, one of the preventive and treatment aspect, in addition to the research molecules which recently they have launched, plus the medicines which we are giving, meditation and pranayama is going to help a lot in preventing and delaying the progress.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question, it's from India. So it is like, what is the good nutrition for brain? So I will add one or two things in it as well. Like this question can be answered in terms of food as well, like meditation as well. I would also like you to add some things which is good for your brain apart from meditation and food as well. Any activities that helps.
You see, this is a very, very big subject. But when it comes to nutrition, there are so many plus and minuses are there. But they literally say that three things: your quality, your quantity, and timing has to be very, very good as far as food is concerned. When it comes to the quality, the unprocessed food, you see the color which the nature has made. All the fruits have different colors, vegetables have different colors, you have nuts with different colors. Whole 1 week, every day you have different colors for 1 week. It's a good nutrition for you, and it is a good for brain. Things are done. Quantity, you should remember whatever our stomach, how much it can take, do that. Third is timing is very important. It is always said that if you eat before sunset in the evening and before like 1 o'clock in the lunch time. See, I'll tell you mine. My breakfast is at 8, 12:15 is the lunch, 6:45 is the dinner. So with this timing, because digestive juices are maximum here, things gets digested well. If it gets digested well, every system functions in a proper way. You remember the last time when I spoke, I showed an orchestra playing. When we eat properly with quantity, quality, and timing, the whole orchestra, the music will come. Otherwise, somewhere there will be a noise, either in the stomach or in the heart or in the lung or in the brain. Some noise will be there. So you have to fine tune that. I think everything is answered in this simple way.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Next question is from Argentina. That does meditation help when there is a benign vertigo?
Okay. See, vertigo is entirely, if somebody doesn't know what is vertigo, it is spinning. And true vertigo is you are feeling that your environment is spinning. And it is due to imbalance somewhere, either in the inner ear or the cervical cord or in the brainstem. That imbalance is due to vertigo. That has to be rectified wherever possible. But meditation as such, we will not have any study on this as far as my knowledge goes. But people come to me that they have vertigo, whether it is true or not, we don't know. But we tell them to do pranayama and meditation. Somewhere it is going to help by just making them positive. But if I say benign vertigo, whether it will help or not, it is a subject. They can try meditation along with the medicine. If it works, maybe after 4 weeks, they can give their experience and share whether it has helped or not.
So I have a question for Dr. Nilay and Dr. Singhvi both, and maybe it sounds little funny. Just now, Dr. Singhvi mentioned that the plants also have life and they also have feelings. Like if you go to a tree with to cut it, then the tree starts feeling scared. So exactly what happens when you eat a plant? Like suppose if I am eating a banana, so that consciousness in the banana, does it feel scared, or it has some kind of the same thing happens what uh, happens to the animals, or do you you have any did you ever give a thought about it, like what happens to the plants when you're eating it or when you're plucking it to eat, or you know I'm asking both the doctors.
Now, you see, Nila, you want to answer? Or shall I take on?
Nila, you are muted. Yeah, please take. Dr. Singhvi, please take.
See, every individual, every animal, every insect, every plant, they have their own evolutionary thing. They have their own hardware and software built in. And see, a man doesn't eat a man. Man does eat an animal. Man eats the plant and the grains. Now, for example, I love mango. I eat a mango. The software of the mango is very, lesser intensity. So the mango becomes Dr. Singhvi.
Oh.
Now, this is very interesting. Mango becomes Dr. Singhvi, and I go to a master, I surrender, he says this, and I become one with the master. Same thing, the software of the mango and the fruits and the vegetables doesn't fight with the human software. But when it comes to animal, say a chicken is there and a cow is there. The chicken software and cow software is entirely different. Cow software is very, very highly evolved in the animal pattern. And if somebody is, that's why it is told in the, all the Vedas, cow has been prayed as a higher energy. Then what happens when an animal is eaten? The software of the animal will start fighting with the software of the man, and depending upon the intensity. See, a person who is doing meditation regularly, he develops compassion, he will not eat over a period of time. See, even in say Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has never told a difference between vegetarian and non-vegetarian. He said, Satvik, Tamsik, Rajsik, matter ends there. In that subtly he said, what is Rajsik and what is Tamsik. He has told indirectly that animal food, whatever is there, stale. And also scientifically, the intestine is very long. When you eat meat, it becomes a longer time to remain in the intestine and produce toxins. So then the struggle starts between a human software and the animal software. It is slightly evolved. Then in few people, the software may take over. That's why sometimes the behavior can be erratic. So this is my simple answer for this. It is all about software. The lower plant and all, now once it is cut, it is meant for that, So that software is taken up.
Thank you. Software, Dr. Singhvi, sorry, the Spanish there is a question from Argentina that what is software? What do you mean by the software here? And
Okay. See, if you have the computer, then it has got a hardware and a software. Software is all the things which runs that system, the applications which runs that system. And if I have say Windows 8, Windows 9, Windows 10, why they have made like that? When 10 is there, 10 you install, 9 and 8 will go off. Unless you put 8. Software means the soft running machine, the application which runs the machine.
thank you. Would you like to add anything, Dr. Nila? Or
Yeah, so I think very interesting question, but I feel that everything, as Sir said, it's two things, made of two things. One is energy and information. So with what intention you're going to eat it, the plant will probably know it. Because as we again say that everything is connected to everything else. So I think that's why that prayer before the food, all these rituals that we have been taught to pray before food, what we basically are doing is probably we are जैसे दोष को निर्दोष करना है, तो निर्दोष is only, I feel, that to bring it to the level of innocence, so much that mango becomes part of Singhvi sir's system, or mango becomes part of my system, because we are just we are making it very innocent by praying, or जो दोष जो है उसको निर्दोष बना रहे हैं. That is what I would say. That is why we are trying to neutralize the. I'm sure even the plants, when they are cut to even eat food, they have something, but that negativity can be. That's why we pray before food, or probably that's why the reason why the ritual of praying before food, being grateful, so that it is neutralized and then it is taken in. Maybe that's what I feel. Probably that's what I would think.
thank you, Nila. Anupama will not divert from the subject. Please carry on the questions.
Thank you, everyone. I think from now we've answered all the questions from last week. We'd like to move on to discuss today's very interesting topic of the autonomic nervous system.
Before that, I have a request from Argentina that we should go a little slow because their translation will be more comfortable.
I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, I think it's visible.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Last time, when I finished the talk, I realized later, the brain waves and the brain also have neurochemicals and also an autonomic nervous system, which I should have discussed, but I was just finished the session and there was suddenly a discussion on this. The moment I thought, oh, this we should have done, but it would have taken a longer time. So this is an opportunity to extend that talk. Two things. Meditation is a very complex mind-body process. Of course, we have discussed about the cognition, sensory perception, emotions, brain circuits. And today what we are going to do is two very important things. One is brain chemicals and autonomic nervous system, which we are going to discuss. See, every time we talk, there are two aspects which always come. Number one, health. Defining health is also a big issue. If somebody asks what is the disease, they will tell. What is depression, they will tell. But what is health, it is always a difficult thing to answer. But according to me, when a meditation is done by a healthy person, the things are different. And people who are having psychological disorders, they want to do meditation because to get rid of these diseases. Just to tell you examples, depression, anxiety, phobias, insomnia, difficult to sleep, impulsive, agitation, and post-traumatic stress disorders. These are the common psychological disorders which come into play. And why I have brought this into the first slide is because all the diseases, psychological diseases, psychiatric diseases, their corresponding things in the brain is neurochemical or chemical derangement and neurohormonal derangements. In that context, if you see this, we have these two things. One is the central nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, and there is a peripheral nervous system. In that, important aspect is autonomic nervous system, which has two components, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And to just give you a simple explanation for this, when a psychiatric or psychological disorder comes into play, usually their sympathetic system is overactive. When a person is relaxed and resting with a good digestion, his parasympathetic response is overtaken. So normally what is happening nowadays, if you see, there should be a balance between both these systems. But the sympathetic system is overactive. That is, left brain, analyzing, restless, anxiety, sweaty palms, tremors, and simultaneously restlessness, agitation, the sympathetic system. And there are corresponding neurochemical changes like sympathetic system, norepinephrine, epinephrine. Parasympathetic system, very important neurochemical, that is acetylcholine. And always there is a lot of discussion that only one nerve, that is vagus nerve, if that is healed, most of the neurochemical changes will revert back to the normal thing in a diseased person. But when it comes to a normal individual, the things will be entirely a different thing. There are two different things. Healthy person doing meditation and a person who is having disease like any psychological or psychiatric illness. You see, this is a nerve which runs from the brainstem, diagrammatic representation. Vagus nerve goes from brain till every part it is supplied, and it not only controls the swallowing, the digestive system, all the heart control, the lung control, the GI system, everything is controlled. But important thing is here. What are the symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction? Why I brought that first slide? If you see, all the things are coming back here. Depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, loss of appetite, forgetfulness, heart issues, nausea, dizziness, heartburn, irritable bowel disease and digestive juices abnormality, obsessive compulsive disorders, Alzheimer's, autism, heart failure, irritable bowel disease, aches and pains in the body, fibromyalgia. I am not telling that vagus nerve alone is responsible for all of this, but it plays a very, very important role. When we tell parasympathetic system, we have to heal this nerve because it is directly connected to the higher centers. Now coming to the, see, we have about 100 billion cells, and all what happens is all our thought process, the responses, the memory, everything starts with a single nerve, single neurons effect. And when it talks to the other, how it talks to the other neuron by electrical thing and also by chemicals. The chemicals play a very, very important role in various functions of the brain in terms of your memory, your well-being, your intelligence, your better connections, your thoughts. Everything is neurochemicals and neurochemistry. How it affects is whenever a thought arises, the impulse is created, the electric current talks to the each other neurons, then there is a release of neurochemicals. The neurochemicals which are released are about 100 of them, but we are going to see few of them and we generalize the thing. We'll not talk about individual, otherwise it will be a confusion and more scientific thing, only to make you understand these things will happen. And the moment the thought process arises, a chemical is released, it talks with the crosses the synapse and it talks to the other neuron and the electricity is generated. One is electrical current, second is the neurochemicals. So we have in the brain how they talk by connection, by electricity, as well as neurochemicals. And everything, whatever we do in our life, there is a corresponding representation. Even we see, we think, we feel low, we feel high, everything will be a change in the neurochemical which is occurring in the brain, and it is very much scientific. So what are the neurotransmitters which are influenced by meditation? Now see, the commonly in most of the people, they have heard about dopamine, acetylcholine, serotonin. It is a common thing. Everybody has listened in one or the other talk. People will talk about you are doped, means suddenly the dopamine response is there, you feel high. But meditation will increase the dopamine level, making you positive. But remember, if it goes excess, then various aggression, psychosis, and schizophrenic like symptoms can come up. So dopamine will have a dual thing. At particular level, it will give you high and positivity, but if it goes beyond that, then the disease comes. Then this serotonin, you can tell a happy neurochemical which is there. You know, when psychiatrists give you antidepressants, what they do is the medicines which they give, they increase the serotonin level, they increase the norepinephrine level, and few of them increase slightly a dopamine level. What happens with this? The person, you know, it has been found that in depression, these chemicals are less and these are elevated artificially, and the person will feel positive and its antidepressant effect. But when a meditation is done, serotonin level increases. How they have found out is after meditation, continuous meditation, they check their metabolites of serotonin in the urine and they found out the levels were elevated. Simultaneously, here the vagus nerve come into picture. You know, 90% of the serotonin of the body is in the gut, and it travels from the gut higher up through the superhighway of vagus nerve to the brain centers. And because of that, the vagus nerve is very, very important in terms of feeling a positivity and also a bridge between conscious and subconscious mind. Then, of course, there is acetylcholine, of course, melatonin, which is responsible for the sleep. People who meditate, their melatonin level is on a higher side. They have good sleep, as well as this melatonin, serotonin, acetylcholine, they are, and also this GABA, they have got interaction, and ultimately they have their effect because of elevated serotonin levels. Then beta endorphin is there. It is also called as a endogenous painkiller. You know, people who do a lot of jogging and gym, you know, even their muscles are paining, they feel good about it because the endorphin levels are elevated in the brain. Then the glutamate, it is a very interesting thing. You should know that the area of intelligence, the prefrontal cortex, which I spoke to last time, the glutamate level increases there. So the connections are better. It makes a person at a higher platform. Excitatory effect is there about glutamate on the prefrontal cortex. Then interesting thing is, whenever a person is stressed, one of the most important chemical, or to say hormone, that is cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It increases in level. And of course, if it is increased transiently as a stress response, it is good enough. But if the stress persists in terms of depression or anxiety level, restless level, then it starts having its effect. Like bone gets weaker, person develops high blood pressure, heart disease. It increases the fat level in the body, causing strokes and heart attacks. And also it increases the sugar level. It has been found out that people who did meditation, within 3 weeks, their cortisol level came down significantly to the normal level. And they have even had a research paper on the police personnel who have aggressions, lot of physical work, their cortisol level always on a higher side. When they did meditation, in 3 weeks, it came down. This is the one thing which has come up, cortisol. Then, of course, there is arginine vasopressin, which it increases, and it increases the positivity in the body. Norepinephrine and epinephrine are sympathetic system which gets elevated. Whenever there is excitement, the adrenergic drive is there. But of course, it is required wherever it is there. But when person who meditates, there was an answer about reaction time and response. The reaction will not be there, but the response will be good because of the lower epinephrine and norepinephrine levels. Then, of course, this ACTH. This is another hormone which, when elevated, it increases the cortisol level. Meditation decreases this hormone, and this is a diagram which is showing the axis. Complete axis is there. Why I brought this neurochemical and see, it is not a very easy subject, but only thing one should realize, apart from structural changes, there are lots of neurochemicals, neurohormones which gets elevated and decreased, and ultimately how meditation stabilizes. It stabilizes the thing, but the jugglery in the brain between the neurons is so vast. Just to give you an example, 100 billion cells create 3 trillion connections, maybe more than 3 trillion connections in the brain. And to get into individual, there are a lot of permutation combinations. And that's why sometimes I feel that are we on the right track, and we are never going to end this by just structural change, then the neurochemical change. Then when are we going to achieve a higher state just by just discussing this? But this is also important. because we have to bring people who are left brain oriented, who want always why for everything, and for that why to answer, this is the method which has been evaluated. But simultaneously it has to be noted, but when we do meditation, actually it is all beyond all these things what we are discussing. That's why there should be another talk where you are not discussing the brain changes, you are not discussing the this neurochemical, we are only discussing something beyond logic. That should be another thing to be discussed. That's why time to go beyond neurochemistry and vagus nerve. I have made the talk very simple and small, just to make you just a small realization that there is something neurochemical changes which are with the subject. You have a more than 1,000 pages book to read in a small letter, and at the end of second page you will forget what happened, what is interacting with other thing. It is so difficult. So I would like to take on more questions on this rather than continuing and more of a theoretical talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was interesting. It was very nice.
Thank you, Dr. Singhvi. That was very insightful. There is one question that has come about, and it's got to do with is it the parasympathetic nervous system? No, sorry, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight and flight. So the question is that is primarily designed for a situation of survival, where you're fighting for survival. In today's day and age, where you have situations that you are continually fighting for something, whether it's a stressful situation, whether it's related to work. In this case, there's a pandemic, then you've got a work situation. What is the impact of the repeated and persistent exposure of the stress on the body?
See, I think if this was answered, whenever there is a repeated stress in the body, the most important, the stress hormone, that is cortisol level, it remains on a higher side. If somebody has attended my the first talk where I spoke on health stabilizing triangle, where the one side the immunity is there, other side the neurochemical, third is the brain and the mind. When the cortisol level increases, whenever there is a stress, cortisol levels persistently elevated will increase your BP, blood pressure. It will increase the fat quantity of your tummy, abdomen, obesity. That will lead to stroke and heart attacks. Your immunity will be down because it's a steroid. Then bone demineralization, thyroid dysfunction will start coming up. Now, the catch situation is sympathetic system bad? Not at all. If it is not there, person is not going to survive. If only sympathetic system is there, parasympathetic system is not there, person is not going to survive. They act in synchronous. Very, very, subtle balance is always created between these two. Only thing is when there is a dysfunction for a longer period of time, persistent restlessness, anxiety for more. See, everybody will have a fight. Everybody will have, it doesn't mean their BP, it goes up and it comes down. But people who meditate regularly, the catch is there. There, the cortisol level will go and it comes down immediately. The rise will not be that high as it is seen in a normal individual. So their stress response is better, their immunity is better, as well as their fight and flight. Their ability to take decisions will be better. So they don't get agitated very easily, and they also fight all the things which the person mentioned about during this pandemic.
Thank you. The other question that has also come about is, you mentioned with the dopamine, like excessive dopamine can result in certain disorders. I pose the question, does excessive meditation cause any of these effects, where someone is continuously meditating and continuously doing some form of a spiritual practice?
See, again, my take will be, it's a very relative question. Excessive meditation doesn't have a definition. Second thing, if a person can digest excess of meditation, let him do, there is no problem. If he thinks or if she thinks that excessive meditation is causing harmful effect, it means the digestion of that meditation is not good for that person. So, but meditation excess of that will not produce all this effect. Like there is a very subtle balance which is there. If a person is doing a proper meditation every day, will not have. If excessive is there, then probably he will not be sitting asking question also. Either he will be liberated or enlightened, or he will be having some sort of a problem. So he will not be sitting here.
Thank you. Swamiji, the same question goes to you with regards to the ability to digest the meditation, like Dr. Singhvi mentioned. How does one maintain meditation that becomes effective? So you are doing a minimal amount of meditation, but there's quality and it's effective.
See, the first thing, the first very important aspect is the right technique. So, and for that you need a teacher, a master. So if you have a master and if you're following the right technique, then definitely the master will guide you how much, how long, and what you are supposed to do. And that's why in ancient days, there was a rule that any spiritual practices you have to do under the guidance of a master. And the master will decide according to the ability, merit, and caliber that who is going to do what. So here, if you start doing it alone without any guidance or reading some books or something else, maybe in future you're going to put yourself in trouble. So that's why the first thing, you know what you're supposed to do. A master, the right technique, and the guidance from the master.
Thank you.
Dr. Singhvi, so I have one question from audience. It's coming from India. So basically, this person, he got brain stroke 3 months ago. So now he's having some symptoms like, can't read long topics, does not like, listening to songs which he used to like. Overthinking is there. There is there are some thoughts which vanishes while he is thinking. His noise irritates. He's yawning frequently, but still not getting, sound sleep. And there are some sensory touches that he feels on his right face. So he wants to know that, how can he get a better sleep?
Better sleep, he should start doing meditation also, as well as let him do Brahmari Pranayam. Brahmari Pranayam will be good for him. Not only he will sleep better, his perceptions will become stabilized. Let him do these 2 pranayams. One is Nadi Shodhan Pranayam and Brahmari Pranayam he should do. And if he do Brahmari Pranayam set of 6, 4 times a day, you can check on the YouTube site of mine. So 6 times, 4 times a day, let him do for 3 weeks. I think many things will settle down along with Nadi Shodhan Pranayam. Of course, medicines he will continue. Time is going to heal also. And accepting the disease. The recovery is not complete. There are certain symptoms which are because of residue. Those are going to be there. That acceptance has to come. And that's where the meditation, the Brahmari Pranayam and Nadi Shodhan Pranayam will be helping. Okay.
Yes. So one more question that is along, brain stroke only. This is also from someone in India, that my brother had a brain stroke in 2013 and his right side was paralyzed. So he has not come back to normal life yet. And he is a 50-year-old person. So is it still possible that, he can get better now?
See, usually all the neurological stroke which a person develops, the healing is very fast during the first 2 to 3 weeks, and it continues for about 6 months. 90 to 95% of the healing, whatever is supposed to occur, will occur in first 6 months. After that, it is a very, very slow process, uphill task. So it is almost 8 years. The conditioning physiotherapy to continue, nothing much can be done about it. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singhvi. We don't actually have any more questions, but I think we've all learned a lot from today. It's been very insightful, and most definitely we would like to have you again to discuss beyond neurochemistry. I think that will also be brilliant and something that can be very debatable.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singhvi, for coming. You're the most popular doctor in the whole session, our 22 episodes, and people are really happy to listen all these interesting things from you. And we definitely would love to have you here every session, actually. So whenever you are free, please do join us. And for everybody, our coming Sunday, we are going to have a session on ovarian and breast cancer. So these two cancer we are going to cover, ovarian cancer and breast cancer, and we are going to have a very one of the best cancer specialists in India with us. So please do join coming Sunday, 27th of June and 9 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Nilay, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.